Zoe Lama Rinpoche, Dagi Chiwo Pede Chinchula. Kadrin Jemba Kani Jesunde, Kasundu Jina So may we all be happy and free from suffering. So I'm sure you're all very satisfied with full tummies. Maybe you had a cat nap after lunch. There's some beautiful water lilies flowering just by the bridge there. So when the sun's out, they open out. So they're very beautiful. We just had a look now, didn't we? It's very, the symbol, like they're there as like our imitation lotuses. So, no mud, no lotus. No anger, no chance for compassion. The antidote for jealousy is sympathetic rejoicing, mudita. So if I'm looking at this woman here with an orange scarf, what's your name, sorry? Sandra. Then I could look at that and think, oh, I don't have an orange scarf, and I could be jealous. Then there's a lose-lose situation. I look at her, she looks at me very paranoid. I look at her like, I haven't got a beautiful orange scarf like that. And it's a lose-lose situation, jealousy. But the same eyes can look at it in a different way, like I sympathetically rejoice. I got the power to go beyond me and to be happy that you have such a beautiful coloured scarf to wear. Orange is the colour of peace in the Theravadan countries. So it's a win-win situation. I'm smiling, you're smiling. So no mud, no lotus. Any situation, if you're mindful enough, can be transformed so that the mud, without the mud, you can't have the flower. So you're grateful for the mud instead of being frightened or trying to get rid of the mud or go into hydroponics. Instead, you're grateful for everything. That's the idea, universal sense of gratitude. Whatever life brings you, it's an opportunity. Whatever life brings you, it's an opportunity. So even there's some interesting, I think the Japanese calligraphy for crisis is opportunity. So you could either see it as a crisis or you could see it as an opportunity. So if you have this universal sense of gratitude, then your whole world becomes like a kind of paradise of limitless opportunities. But the same world, somebody else could see, if their mind isn't cultivated, they could see it as like a disaster zone. Like Marvin, the manic depressive robot in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So that everything depends on attitude. So in the alphabet of meditation, A is for attitude. Attitude reigns supreme. So the paramitas are about a shift in attitude. So instead of seeing everything as like a done deal, like the writing of a sword in wet cement, like I had an unhappy childhood, so therefore, like the writing of the sword in wet cement, that means the rest of my life is going to be heavy. Heavy, man. It's going to be heavy. Instead, everything is like the writing of the sword in water, so that you have the chance to rewrite your future. So it's very empowering, isn't it, really? Your attitude, like Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor, said, between stimulus and response, there is that space where you can choose your attitude. And that attitude is the greatest freedom that we can have, the freedom to choose your attitude in any situation. So, and this session will focus on what makes it all possible, the fifth paramita, which is the paramita of In Tibetan it's called Sam-ten, which means stable mind. So in our culture we might call it mindfulness. So the fifth paramita is going to be the focus of this little half an hour session. So what is meditation? What is mental stability? What does it mean? It's a good question. So, imagine like this was, a high-tech camera. I mean, this is a true story. In the early days, a Tibetan from here was given like when the cameras were about 18 inches or 2 foot long that you held on your shoulder. So, take some pictures of Tibet when you go to Tibet, and when you come back you can show us. And he tried to take some pictures on horseback. So playing back through the screen, it was like close-ups of stirrups and clear shots of a blue sky, and then like little Tibetan alpine flowers like Edelweiss or something. So it was very colourful and it was very noisy. Can you imagine all of the, the horse and the galloping and everything? It was very colourful and very noisy, but it didn't really, it was a headache to watch after 20 seconds. Didn't like to say that. So this is like our mind in the 21st century. You wake up, you switch on the phone like da, sorry, whatevs. And then, so it's like our mind is moving too fast. So the meditation is like putting the high-tech camera on a little tripod. And then you can have crystal clear images and sound quality like we're having now. And it's not a different mind, it's just the different conditions, the different attitude. So meditation is like, say, even 3 minutes meditation is a chance to regain focus. Ta-da! Yeah, to get your focus back. So maybe your attitude is, I want to have a joyful life, and then you forget about that during the day, but your 3 minutes of meditation is a chance to reconnect with your values, to reconnect with your intention. Like, I'm going to enjoy, this morning you could say, today I choose to be joyful because it's good for my health. I like that. So this isn't I, little e, this little I, sorry, but this is your enlightened self, your Buddha self. Today I choose to be joyful because it's good for my health. And then, say, the 3 minutes of meditation is reconnecting with that, coming back to the present. So it's not back to the future, but it's back to the present, because we're too much living in the future or the past. So we're coming back home to the present in meditation, and it's the metaphor is like the camera on the tripod, because we don't see we don't see the full opportunities if we're moving too fast. Yeah? And I think there's a very strong quality of aggression about moving too fast. I'd call it aggressive speed. Yeah? Like you're rushing, you're in a rush to fulfill the next goal, and you don't care how you get to that goal or who you harm. So there's a neurotic, aggressive quality about speed. So the meditation is a chance to slow down, get back, regain focus. And the fifth paramita is like the mindfulness, firm, like literally Sam-ten, like firm, stable mind. so that you have mental stability. Mental stability, I think that's what we would call it in our culture. So there was a time here where somebody did a 4-year retreat, and afterwards they went to see a Lama, and they said, "Oh, I'm so disappointed. All I got from the retreat was a very strong sense of mental stability." And of course the Lama said, "You did really well. You know, this is a success. Mental stability. If you're stable, you can enjoy life like you can enjoy the water lilies in the pond under the bridge. You're stable enough to really, choose to be joyful because it's good for your health." So, and the other thing is, the stability gives you the chance to access the sixth paramita. So that's really important. Like a lot of mindfulness in the West is all about like stress reduction or reducing depression or feeling good, yes? But the real intention of mindfulness meditation is different. So the actual the formula that I was taught with my Burmese teacher, like when I was on retreat or whatever for 3 months in Bodh Gaya, bless you, in Sanskrit is Shila Samadhi Panya Anicca, Anicca Anatta Dukkha Shila Samadhi Panya. So I think it's worth, if you'll bear with me, just going through these terms because they are so central to Buddhist meditation. So anicca, anatta, dukkha. Anicca means impermanence. Anatta means there is no concrete separate self. And dukkha means suffering. So why we meditate is because if we don't meditate, we suffer unnecessarily. We're not flexible because everything's changing, but we're not flexible. We can't adapt. And we go around what I would call shellfishly, yeah? So we have a shellfish attitude to our life, like we've got a very thick external shell of our defense mechanisms or passive aggressivity, but underneath that shellfish hard, we're soft and gooey and vulnerable that we're always trying to hide. And obviously shellfish don't travel very fast or far. So instead, anicca, anatta, dukkha is no concrete separate self. Everything is changing all the time, whether we like it or not. And there is a tendency that if you take everything personally, you suffer a lot. Yeah? Take things too personally. Self-centric thinking. If you think you're the centre of the universe, other people might not agree with you. And then you're in trouble. So in response to this 3 things, impermanence and no self and suffering, the first thing is be ethical. So it's shila. Shila literally in Sanskrit means cool, like in the middle of a hot spell, you're cool, you don't get overexcited or stressed. So shila means there's enough suffering already in the world, don't add to it by being unethical. How about that? Simple, isn't it? Very simple, very direct. So, and then shila, samadhi, which is another term for samten, the 5th paramita that I'm trying to talk about now, is don't lose focus. Don't lose focus. Cultivate mental stability. And then you can develop prajna, the six paramita, which in this other language of Buddhism is panya. So it's like the world is, everything's impermanent, there's no solid self, there is unnecessary suffering, like a huge amount of it. So what do you do in response to la condition humaine, the human condition? What do you do in response to it? First of all, you don't harm anybody. So you know the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, ahimsa is the same principle in Hinduism. Ahimsa means harmlessness. So the one thing is don't do any harm. I think it's even the Hippocratic Oath of Galen, is it? This thing of the doctor's vow, don't do any harm. So I think it's that. Sorry, that's a little bit unnecessary. Gilding, I've seen so many lilies, I'm starting to gild the lily, so I think I ought to be very careful. But let's keep it really, really simple. Shila means don't harm. It's not... Shila is be ethical, don't harm anyone. Samadhi is get focus. And then when you're, like the camcorder is on the tripod, you see things clearly. And then you see that the self is like a flag. It's not the real thing. Your normal sense of self is like a flag. It's not the real, it's not solid. You are not, fundamentally, everything is interconnected. You see this not as a concept, but as a truth. And then you're set free of worrying about the future, because there is no self to worry about the future. That's just your simulation self. Like everybody is running a simulation. So the brain is creating this simulation. And this simulation, if you're stressed, becomes very, very distorted. So that so when you're stressed, the ancient evolutionary reaction pattern is, well, you don't need your brain very much. The main thing is, like, you need to act without thinking. So it actually shuts off the brain when you're very stressed. And it actually releases, like, from these amygdalae, these little glands, like almond size. The amygdalae releases cortisol and adrenaline, which actually interferes with your ability to make good choices. So when you're faced with an incredibly important decision in your life, you end up at the fridge and the cheesecake. Cheesecake, the only solution. Because your brain is saying, well, it's too much to sort of cope with this choice, so do the third thing that's completely irrelevant. Sometimes called displacement activity. So, but I don't think I can overemphasize that in classical Buddhism, mindfulness has the side effect of stress reduction and reducing depression. But the main thing was to get an insight into the true nature of life. And then the truth, the six paramita, sets you free, because if there is no one to get angry, there is no anger. If there's no one to be jealous, there's no jealousy. If there's no one to be greedy, there's no greed. Do you see what I mean? It's like going to the root of the problem. Like in the garden of your mind, it's going to the root of the Japanese knotweed in the garden of your mind, is this kind of clinging sense of self, like, what about me? Me, 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 me. Or in a George Harrison song of All Things Must Pass, I, me, mine. All through the day, I, me, mine. That this is a constant interruption of all the wonderful passage of life. is that what about me in the future? What about me in the past? And we're like self-obsession, if you like to call it that. So I don't know how that sounds with you, but this is the classical reason for doing the mental stability, the mindfulness. But if you can learn to identify thoughts without over-identifying with them, I think that's already getting there. So that's really simple, isn't it? It's really simple to say. So the fifth paramita is like the antidote to having a distracted mind. So what is the opposite of mindfulness? It's distraction. Like being distracted. And this purity, in Buddhism they talk about purification. Okay? Purification. The path of purification. So a Christian philosopher called, I think Danish, Søren Kierkegaard, said purity of heart is the ability to will one thing. So I'm translating that into Buddhism, not translating, but reinterpreting that from Buddhism. Purity of heart arrives by having the ability to distinguish what is helpful from what is harmful. So anger, selfish anger is harmful to you and the other person. So you get to choose, I don't go down that road, I'll purify the anger. And so anger is wanting things to be different from how they are. So instead of being anger, that's the same as compassion. So if someone's hungry and you want to feed them, that is wanting things to be different from how they are. So it's the same energy, but with a different motivation. So I don't want to set the bar too high, because then we might get a bit discouraged. But the fifth paramita, the mindfulness or santen or mental stability, is very valuable, for reducing stress, is very valuable for reducing depression or anxiety. And I don't think there's absolutely nothing wrong with using it for that. So the people who invented modern stress theory back in the 1950s, like Hans Selye, stress was originally an engineering term for like a metal bar, how much stress it could take before it could break. So stress is often just feeling you're out of control, that you're a puppet to fate or other people's whims. So mental stability liberates you from that kind of, that problem, that cul-de-sac of being stressed, because you have mastery. You have mastery. So it's like your monkey mind or neurotic mind can be a very faithful servant, but a very terrible master. So it's having the mental stability not to be on puppet strings to distractions and just going all over the place in your mind. So the wandering mind is the big problem. The wandering mind of just 1 minute you're in heaven, the next minute you're in hell. And you're just blown around like a feather, in the wind. So you had a little feather, you could have a fan there, the feather would go right over there, and then another cools, and then another fan, and then the feather's right over there in the corner by the cupboard. Our minds are like that. You see a headline from Ukraine or, football match or something. So it's like this mind is like a feather in the wind going around being blown into wonderful lands or miserable lands. So it's like ending that kind of being the mind like a feather. It's like you're like a body like a mountain. You're stable. So that there's a lovely story like say if you've got a border collie and you throw a stick, every time, 20 times you throw a stick, the border collie will race excitedly and deliver the stick. So that's like thoughts. We normally run after our thoughts. We get distracted by our thoughts and we follow them like a dog chasing a stick. But in the story, if you throw a stick in front of a lion, you only throw it once. You only get to throw it once. So when you sit in meditation, the thing is not to let your thoughts give you the runaround. So you could say to yourself, I don't believe in thoughts anymore. That's really helpful. Or don't believe everything you think. Say you've had a terrible day at work, and then you take your... So meditation, take your meditation to your work, but don't take your work to your meditation. How about that for a formula? So you take your mindfulness and compassion to your work, but you don't take it home with you. But say it's 9 o'clock at night and you're thinking of a client, say you're a psychotherapist and you're thinking of a client with problems. Maybe it's a weekend that is starting, but instead of the psychotherapist being fully present with their children and wife, they're thinking about the client. And the client might have been kidnapped by aliens. The client might be in a different time zone, but that thought, they believe it, that's their picture of the client. It's the simulation again, and all the worry comes from something that could be completely resolved by the end of the weekend. So take your meditation to your work, but don't take your work to your meditation. So the meditation is your free space to reconnect with your good attitude, your joy, your focus. It's like recharging an iPhone or something. It's like recharging your energy, because you're not losing energy trying to sort out your simulation. Because your simulation isn't the same as the truth. And just finally, like one definition of meditation is, one of my definitions of meditation. Meditation isn't about escaping from reality. Like zoning out into fantasy. So meditation isn't about achieving like ecstasy or, wonderful kind of psychedelic experiences. Meditation is simply a matter of creating a space, a kind of space where we can let go of our neurotic habits and connect with the wonder, mystery and energy of pure being. So that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? I'm so sorry. This is just Clive. Like I said, this weekend you're learning the Paramitas by putting up with me. But meditation is not about artificially creating ecstasy. It's not artificially kind of trying to run away from your life. meditation is almost like facing yourself, facing the situation, your neurosis, without getting neurotic about it. And then you get chance to reconnect with the wonder, mystery and energy of pure being. Because you've let the negativities go, the distractions go. So you let the distractions go is like, draining the diesel from the petrol Porsche Land Cruiser, and you don't proactively move the car. That would be a disaster, but you just stop, notice what's happening, and let go of the things that burden your mind, so that you've got loads of space to introduce the helpful things like the love and the compassion and the joy. So it's a purification, just by being aware of what is helpful and what is harmful. I think that's the key thing. You could, at the end of the day, I did this at lunchtime. Was it helpful or was it harmful? And then keep going with the helpful and let go of the harmful. And tame your mind, because we're all born to be wild. Because of evolution, it's not our fault, but we're all born to be wild. When you're in the womb, even at 5 months, you still have a tail. So everybody in this room once had a tail. So because of descent from like dinosaurs or whatever. So it's not our fault, but we can work with our evolution, what we have. And that's it. So, thank you.